Let me ask you something real, and don't answer out loud. Answer honestly inside yourself. How many times have you told yourself, I need to focus, only to feel your mind slip away seconds later? You didn't lack intelligence. You didn't lack ambition. You didn't even lack discipline. What you lacked was control over where your attention goes. Because here's the truth most people never hear. Focus doesn't show up when you feel ready, inspired, or motivated. If it did, success would be common. Focus shows up when you decide who's in charge. The moment you stop waiting for a feeling and start commanding your attention, everything changes. Not gradually, immediately. Your energy sharpens, your mind organizes, your actions line up. And once you understand this, focus stops being something you chase and becomes something you activate on demand. Focus is a decision, not a feeling. Most people wait to feel focused before they act, and that single mistake quietly ruins years of potential. Feelings are unstable. They rise and fall with sleep, stress, food, opinions, weather, and memories. If focus depended on feelings, no one would ever build anything meaningful. High performers don't negotiate with their moods. They decide in advance what deserves their attention, and they execute regardless of how they feel in the moment. The brain is not designed to lead. It is designed to follow clear commands. When you hesitate, when you check how you feel before you act, you hand control of your life to randomness. Decision removes randomness. Decision collapses doubt. The moment you decide, the nervous system organizes itself around that command. Energy stops leaking, attention stops wandering. You don't become focused because you feel ready. You feel ready because you chose to focus. Most distraction is not caused by external noise, but by internal indecision. When the mind is unclear, it seeks escape. It jumps from thought to thought, from screen to screen, not because it is weak, but because it has not been given a clear directive. Decision provides that directive. When you decide, you reduce mental friction. There is no debate, no second guessing, no waiting for motivation to arrive like a guest that may never show up. You act first, and emotion follows. This is how discipline is built, not through force, but through clarity. Every time you decide and follow through, you teach your brain that you are in charge. Over time, focus becomes automatic because your mind trusts your commands. People often confuse focus with intensity. They believe focus requires pressure, strain, or effort. In reality, focus is simplicity. It is the removal of alternatives. When you decide, you close doors, you eliminate options that compete for attention. The brain loves closed loops. Open loops create anxiety. Closed loops create calm. Decision closes the loop. Once a decision is made, attention stabilizes. You are no longer scanning for something better or easier. You are fully present with what is in front of you. That presence is power. That power compounds over time. The quality of your decisions determines the quality of your focus, and the quality of your focus determines the quality of your results. Every meaningful achievement is preceded by a moment of decision, often made when the person did not feel ready, confident, or inspired. They moved anyway. They trained their nervous system to associate action with certainty, not comfort. Over time, this rewires the brain. Focus stops being fragile. It becomes reliable. It shows up on demand because it is no longer dependent on emotion. It is anchored in identity. You become the kind of person who decides and follows through. Once that identity forms, focus is no longer something you struggle to maintain. It becomes part of who you are. Your body commands your mind. Thoughts do not exist in isolation. They are shaped by posture, breathing, muscle tension, and movement. The fastest way to change focus is not by arguing with your thoughts, but by changing how you use your body. The nervous system takes cues from physiology before it processes logic. A collapsed body sends a signal of uncertainty. Shallow breathing signals threat. Stillness without intention invites mental noise. The body speaks first, and the mind listens. This is why trying to think your way into focus often fails. The signal from the body contradicts the command from the mind. When you shift your posture, you shift your state. A lifted chest, grounded stance, and deliberate movement activate neural pathways associated with confidence and alertness. Breathing deeply through the diaphragm increases oxygen flow to the brain and signals safety, allowing higher cognitive functions to come online. This is not motivational theory, it is biology. The body is the steering wheel of the mind. If you want to control focus, you start with physical control. Small adjustments create immediate changes in mental clarity. Most people live in unconscious physiology. They slump, fidget, and breathe shallowly without realizing they are training their brains to stay scattered. Focus requires a state of readiness. Readiness is physical. Athletes understand this instinctively. Before performance, they move with intention, regulate their breathing, and assume powerful stances. They are not waiting to feel focused. They are creating the conditions that make focus inevitable. You can do the same in any environment. The body does not care whether you are on a stage or at a desk. It responds to movement, posture, and breath the same way every time. Energy follows motion. When the body is stagnant, the mind stagnates. When the body moves with purpose, the mind aligns. This is why brief physical resets can restore focus faster than breaks filled with passive consumption. A walk, controlled breathing, or intentional stretching reactivates attention systems in the brain. You are not escaping the task. You are re-entering it from a more powerful state. Over time, your body becomes a trigger for focus. Certain movements, postures, and breathing patterns become associated with deep concentration. You condition yourself to enter that state at will. The body also sets emotional tone. Tension held in the jaw, shoulders, or chest drains cognitive resources. Releasing that tension frees mental bandwidth. Focus is not about adding effort. It is about removing interference. The body often holds interference long after the original stress has passed. Conscious physical control clears that residue. As the body relaxes into strength rather than collapse, the mind becomes quieter and more precise. Thoughts slow down. Priorities sharpen. Distraction loses its grip because the nervous system is no longer signaling urgency or threat. When you master your physiology, you gain leverage over your psychology. Focus stops being fragile because it is anchored in something tangible. You can feel it. You can activate it. The body becomes your ally instead of an obstacle. Over time, this creates a feedback loop. Focus improves performance. Performance builds confidence. Confidence reinforces powerful physiology. That loop, repeated daily, reshapes not only how you focus, but how you experience life itself. Where attention goes, energy flows. Every moment of your life is shaped by what you repeatedly look at, think about, and emotionally react to. Attention is not neutral, it is creative. Whatever you focus on gets fed by your nervous system, your imagination, and your behavior. When attention lingers on fear, fear grows sharper. When it rests on problems, problems multiply. When it locks onto opportunity, solutions begin to appear where none existed before. This is not optimism. It is neurological economics. The brain allocates resources based on attention. Neurons that fire together wire together. What you attend to repeatedly becomes dominant, not because it is more true, but because it is more familiar. Most people believe their emotions control their focus, when in reality, their focus is generating their emotions. The mind scans constantly for confirmation of what it is paying attention to. If you train your attention to search for what is missing, inadequate, or threatening, the brain becomes exceptionally skilled at finding those patterns. Over time, this becomes a self-reinforcing loop. Energy is drained into vigilance and worry, leaving little capacity for creativity or momentum. Shifting attention breaks that loop. The moment you redirect attention, emotional energy follows. Mood changes, motivation changes, behavior changes. Attention also shapes perception of time and effort. When focus is scattered, everything feels heavy. Tasks appear larger than they are. Resistance increases. When attention is directed, time compresses. Effort feels lighter. Flow emerges. This is why two people can perform the same task and have completely different experiences. One is fighting their attention. The other has aligned it. Energy is not only physical stamina, it is mental availability. Attention determines where that availability is invested. The danger is that attention is easily hijacked. Loud stimuli, unresolved emotions, and constant novelty pull attention outward. Without deliberate control, attention becomes reactive rather than intentional. You end up living inside other people's priorities, emergencies, and opinions. Energy leaks into places that do not build your future. Reclaiming attention is an act of self-leadership. It requires noticing where your attention habitually goes and deciding whether that destination deserves your energy. Attention is finite. Every moment you give it away, you are choosing what grows in your life. Training attention does not mean suppressing thoughts. Suppression creates tension and rebound. Training means redirection. You notice where attention has drifted and you calmly guide it back. Over time, this strengthens cognitive control. Attention becomes less impulsive and more selective. You stop feeding what weakens you and start feeding what strengthens you. Energy begins to accumulate instead of disperse. That accumulation creates momentum. Momentum reduces friction. Progress accelerates, not because life became easier, but because energy is no longer fragmented. Clarity eliminates distraction. Distraction is often misdiagnosed as a lack of willpower, but it is more accurately a lack of clarity. When the mind is unsure about what matters most, it remains open to everything. That openness feels like freedom at first, but it quickly turns into overwhelm. The brain is constantly evaluating options, comparing alternatives, and scanning for better choices. This mental scanning is exhausting. Distraction is not the presence of many inputs. It is the absence of a clear priority. Clarity narrows the field. It tells the brain what to ignore. Without clarity, every notification feels relevant. Every thought feels urgent. Every task competes for attention. With clarity, most stimuli lose their pull. They are seen, but not engaged. The mind relaxes because it knows where it is going. Direction reduces noise. This is why clear goals feel calming rather than stressful. They remove ambiguity, and ambiguity is the breeding ground of distraction. Clarity begins with defining outcomes, not activities. Many people know what they are doing, but not why they are doing it. Activity without purpose invites distraction because there is no internal compass. When you define a specific outcome, attention aligns around achieving it. Decisions become easier. Trade-offs become obvious. The brain stops arguing with itself. This internal alignment frees cognitive resources that were previously wasted on indecision. Lack of clarity also magnifies emotional distraction. Unclear goals make setbacks feel personal. Clear goals frame setbacks as feedback. When you know what you are aiming for, obstacles become data, not drama. Emotional reactions shorten because they are contextualized. Focus returns faster. Without clarity, emotions linger because there is no reference point to evaluate them against. The mind circles the same thoughts repeatedly, searching for meaning that clarity would have provided in advance. Clarity is not static. It must be refreshed. As conditions change, clarity must be updated. Old goals that no longer matter create friction. The brain senses misalignment and resists engagement. Regularly revisiting priorities keeps attention clean. It prevents the accumulation of mental clutter. Clarity acts like a filter, allowing only relevant information to pass through. Everything else fades into the background. When clarity is strong, distraction loses its emotional charge. You may still notice impulses to check, switch, or escape, but they no longer control behavior. They are evaluated against a clear standard. If they do not serve the outcome, they are dismissed without struggle. Focus becomes less about effort and more about alignment. You are not forcing attention to stay. You are giving it a compelling place to rest. Over time, clarity reshapes identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who knows what matters. This self-concept further reduces distraction because behavior tends to align with identity. You protect your attention because it is connected to who you believe you are. Focus becomes an expression of self-respect. The mind cooperates because it is no longer confused about its role. It becomes a tool, not a battlefield. Most people overwhelm their minds by chasing too many outcomes at once. One target beats 10 intentions because the brain is designed to aim, not to scatter. When attention is split, progress slows and frustration rises. Multiple intentions create internal conflict, forcing the mind to constantly switch contexts. Each switch drains energy and reduces precision. A single clear target simplifies decision-making. It gives the brain a fixed reference point, allowing thoughts, emotions, and actions to align. With one target, effort compounds instead of cancels itself out. Momentum builds faster because every action reinforces the same direction. Confidence grows because progress becomes visible. The mind relaxes when it knows exactly where it is aiming, and that calm sharpens focus. Simplicity is not limitation, it is leverage. By choosing one target, you create depth instead of noise, and depth is where mastery forms. Emotion locks in concentration because the brain prioritizes what feels significant. Neutral tasks are easily abandoned. Emotionally charged tasks hold attention. When something triggers desire, urgency, pride, or purpose, the mind naturally returns to it. Emotion acts as glue for attention. Without it, focus slips at the first sign of resistance. By consciously attaching emotion to a task, you increase its gravitational pull. Visualizing outcomes, associating tasks with identity, or connecting effort to people you care about intensifies engagement. Emotion also accelerates learning. Experiences with emotional weight are encoded more deeply in memory. This is why emotionally meaningful goals sustain focus even under pressure. When emotion is aligned with intention, concentration stops being forced and starts becoming instinctive. Meaning creates permanent focus because the brain commits to what it believes matters. When an action is connected to a larger purpose, attention stops drifting. Meaning transforms effort into contribution. Tasks are no longer just things to get through. They become expressions of values. This depth anchors focus even when motivation fades. The mind will tolerate discomfort when it understands why it exists. Without meaning, focus relies on willpower, and willpower is fragile. With meaning, focus renews itself because it is tied to identity and purpose. The brain defends what it values, protecting attention from distraction and fatigue. Environment either empowers or weakens you because attention is highly sensitive to surroundings. Visual clutter, noise, and constant interruptions fragment focus before conscious thought begins. A supportive environment reduces the need for self-control by removing unnecessary triggers. Lighting, layout, tools, and even digital spaces silently shape behavior. When the environment aligns with intention, focus becomes easier to maintain. The mind mirrors its surroundings. Order supports clarity. Chaos invites distraction. By designing an environment that reflects your priorities, you externalize discipline and allow attention to settle naturally. Small rituals rewire the brain by creating consistent signals that tell the nervous system what state to enter. When an action is repeated in the same way, at the same time, with the same intention, the brain stops questioning and starts complying. Rituals remove the need for motivation because they bypass deliberation. A specific movement, breath, phrase, or setup becomes a trigger for focus. Over time, the brain associates that ritual with concentration and readiness. This conditioning makes focus faster and more reliable. What once required effort becomes automatic. Rituals turn intention into behavior and behavior into habit, reducing friction and preserving mental energy. Identity sustains focus long-term because behavior always aligns with who you believe you are. When focus is tied only to goals, it fades once progress slows. When focus is tied to identity, it endures pressure, boredom, and challenge. The brain works to stay consistent with self-image. If you see yourself as disciplined, focused actions feel natural. If you see yourself as scattered, distraction feels justified. Shifting identity changes what feels normal. Focus becomes self-expression rather than self-control. Each focused action reinforces the identity, and the identity reinforces the action, creating a loop that stabilizes attention over time. What you've heard today isn't theory. It's a system, a way of taking back control from distraction, overwhelm, and scattered thinking. Focus isn't built by trying harder. It's built by choosing better, choosing where your attention goes, choosing clarity over chaos, choosing meaning over noise, choosing one target instead of 10 competing intentions. When you direct your attention, energy follows. When you create clarity, distraction fades. When you attach emotion and meaning, focus sticks. When your environment supports you, discipline becomes easier. When rituals anchor your behavior, focus becomes automatic. And when focus is no longer just something you do, but something you are, it stops breaking under pressure. This is how ordinary moments turn into momentum. This is how minutes turn into mastery. This is how people stop feeling busy and start feeling powerful. Nothing here requires more time, more talent, or more motivation. It requires a decision to live deliberately, to protect your attention, and to act in alignment with the person you choose to be. If this message sharpened your focus even slightly, imagine what happens when you train it daily. You're watching Tony Robbins Track. Subscribe now and turn focus into your unfair advantage. Drop a comment below. What's the one distraction you're cutting out starting today?